Welcome to the Children's Sunday School Department of the Parkside Baptist Church. We are glad you're listening today. We have been studying in the book of Genesis, and now we're with Abram and Lot. Good morning, boys and girls. Glad you could join us for Sunday School. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of a review, if we could, of what we've gone through so far in Sunday School. Let's see if you can remember, okay? Who was the first man? That's right, Adam. And the first lady? Eve. And they had 3 sons. Now, they had many sons and daughters, but we know of the names of the first 3. That was Cain, Abel, and Seth. Good job. So most of the descendants that we are studying about are from those 3, okay? So we have the descendants of Cain. Remember, he built a city. He had a son named Enoch. Cain had a son named Enoch, and he named the first city that he built after his son Enoch. And then we also learned about how Cain had killed his brother Abel. That's why he was pretty much banished from the presence of his family. But anyhow, then after that, we went straight to the flood. Oh, and we learned about how that God destroyed the whole world with the water there in the flood. And 40 days and 40 nights of constant rain. Can you imagine that? We've had rainy seasons, but it's never flooded the whole world. Not since then. And God put a rainbow in the sky to promise that he'd never do that again. They were on that ark for around a year. Can you imagine that? Whew, that's a long time. Anyhow, so after that, we went straight to the Tower of Babel. And with the Tower of Babel, we learned that that's where the different languages came from. And so if you paid attention real good, that was a couple weeks ago. Now, since then, we've had an excellent story with Jesus Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. So if you haven't seen those, go back and watch those after today, okay? After today's Sunday School lesson. Now we're with Abram and Lot. So go to Genesis chapter number 13. Genesis chapter number 13. Verse number 1, the Bible says, "And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all he had, and Lot with him, into the south. And Abram was a rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold." Look down at verse number 5. "And Lot also, which went with Abram, had flocks and herds and tents." So he was also a wealthy individual. So they started traveling together. And in verse number 7, we find that they had herdsmen. The Bible says in verse number 7, "And there was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelled then in the land." So they were all staying there in the same, kind of like the same valley there, and they were fighting back and forth. There was a strife between the herdsmen of Abram, and the herdsmen of Lot. And let's learn a little bit more about that if we can. Hey! Abram! So move on over! What? No! Lot's pigs and us with wigs were here first! Yeah!
That's right, you tell him.
What? Huh? Oh, miss me, now you gotta leave. Have it your way. I'm gonna tell Abram. Oh, does somebody need to tell her, oh so precious master Abram? Wah, wah, wah. Well, you can tell your master he can have this. Now get out of here.
Ew, gross.
That's teaching him a lesson. I can't wait for a haircut. Wish that barber would open up soon.
So the herdsmen didn't get along at all. So finally Abraham came to Lot and said, "Lot, let there not be strife between me and thee, or my herdsmen and your herdsmen." He said, "Let's go ahead and part ways. And wherever you go, I'll go the opposite." And Lot was like, "Okay, if that's what you desire." So he's looking around and he sees the Canaan land here, and he sees over yonder there's a beautiful plain, the plain of Jordan, just close by to Jordan. Oh, it's beautiful over there, just outside of several beautiful cities. He said, "I'm going over there." So sure enough, he did. He packed up all his things and belongings and told Abraham goodbye, his uncle, and he said, "Let's go." He told his family to head on. So they did. They went and they camped just outside of Sodom. The Bible says, and he pitched his tent towards Sodom. But Abraham separated himself and went to Canaan. And there, as we know, is to be the promised land. And God told Abraham there, he remembered him and said, Abraham, I'm going to make a promise to you. He said, look north. So Abraham looked north. He said, look south. Abraham looked south. He said, look north, east. He looked east, he looked west. And he said, all the land that you see, I promise to you and to your seed. It will belong to y'all. Therefore, we call it the promised land. It was the land that was promised to Abraham. Anyhow, so the Lord also told him there, he said that your seed will be as the sands on the shore. Can you imagine? Have you ever been to the beach and all the sand that's there on the shore? Can you imagine trying to count every single kernel? That's how many generations and generations of Abraham would be. That's a lot of people. And God made that promise, that covenant, if you would, with Abraham. The story goes like this. Lot became famous there around those cities, especially Sodom. And the Bible even says later that he was at the gate, meaning like he was a judge in the land, which you have to raise up in the ranks to be able to do that. So he moved in just outside of Sodom, pitched his tent towards Sodom, and that's where he would dwell now. Well, the Bible says that eventually some kings got mad at the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. So 4 kings rose up against the 5 kings here near Sodom and Gomorrah, and they started to rage a war against them, and Lot was taken captive. Not just Lot, but his wife, his children, and all the belongings that belonged to Lot. And those same kings went through and they wiped out all of the goods that belonged to Sodom and Gomorrah. They took all of it. Well, one man escaped, and he went running as fast as he could to Abram's camp. And he said, Abram, come see, quick! They have taken Lot, his wife. They have taken many captive from Sodom, and they have taken all of the belongings. So Abraham turned around. He told his men, said, get yourselves together and grab all the tools, grab all the weapons we have. The Bible says that he had trained men, 318 of them. He grabbed 318 men, and he snuck up on them one night by night. They snuck into the camp of these people that were holding captive his nephew and all those other folks there. He said, run. Attack! And they went running through. They started chopping, and you know what I mean. They attacked as fast as they could and as hard as they could. So much so that the story is even remembered amongst the other kingdoms. And so they wiped all those folks out, and they got Lot back. And they got the families back, and they got all the women back, and they got all the children back. And they took even the possessions that were owned by Sodom, Gomorrah, and Lot. They took all the cattle back, and Abraham got it all back. Oh, it was a glorious victory. Well, Lot went back to his home, and the king of Sodom said, for payment for doing such a great deed and getting the people back and getting the belongings back, you can have the spoils that they took from Sodom. And Abram looked at the king and said, no, king. He said, otherwise you would be able to say that you have made me rich, but my God has made me rich. My God is the one who has blessed me, not you. God's the one that has taken care of us. He said, however, save the food that they've already eaten. He said, except the food that the soldiers, that the men with me have eaten. And there were, I think, 4 main men that he allowed them to take whatever they wanted out of that loot, you might say, or out of that spoil. So there it was. Lot was saved by Abram. He went through and knocked all those guys out. Can you imagine? He was saved. Woo-hoo! Now, let's find out a little bit from Dr. Who on why Abram was called Abraham. Let's see.
Yes, welcome! Alright, glad you could join us today. Thank you, Brother Josh. Much appreciated, okay? Well, today, we're going to do a name change. So, Abram, in Genesis 17, let me scoot up. Basically, God appeared unto Abram. I told him to be perfect, to be a good man. And he said, I want you to be the father of many nations. And he made a covenant with him that his generations would be wonderful. So, he said, your name no longer, verse number 5 in Genesis 17. Your name will no longer be called Abram, but Abraham. He said, because you'll be father of many nations. So Abraham is now his name. So anywho, then the next chapter we see that two men appeared unto him again, and they told Sarah, and we'll learn more about that next week, that she was going to have a baby. And they didn't believe that because she was old. In Genesis 17:1, we saw that Abraham was 99 years old. Now, that's old. Very old. I mean, like, I can't do it. He's old. Okay. Anywho, so Sarah is old too, okay? And they didn't believe, but that's next week. Okay, anyway. Anywho. So, those two men were with the Lord, and the Lord say that his judgment is true, and that the people in Sodom and Gomorrah were doing evil, wicked things. So much that people were crying unto God, saying, please help us. They're doing evil. So the Lord said, I'll send these two guys to see if it's true. If it's true, I'll know. And so the Lord sent those two men away from Abraham. And Abraham talked to the Lord more. He said, Lord, peradventure, he said, Lord, are you going to destroy the good people with the bad people? He said, Lord, peradventure there's 50 people that are righteous. So, peradventure, God, that there's 50 people that are doing good, living right, clean, good people. Put you first, And God looked down and he said, okay. If there is 50 people, I'll not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for the 50 people's sake. Abraham thought for a second. He goes, well, what if there's only 5 short of 50, He said, so God, sorry, me again. He said, so if there's only 5 people short of the 50, will you still kill everybody? Because there's only 5 people short. And the Lord said, because there's 45, I will not destroy. It's gonna be okay. And Abraham's like, God, don't be mad at me. Maybe so, there's 40 God. He said, I won't destroy the world. I won't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah for 40 people. 40 people's sake, no destroy. Yes, sir. God, what about 30? And God looked down at Abraham and he said, now Abraham, for the sake of 30, no destroying. I'll save everybody for 30. Then Abraham goes again, oh, please, God, don't be angry with me. He said, God, maybe 20? If there's 20 people? Please, God. I think Abraham was thinking, Lot's been there for years. Surely he's taught people, trust in God, be good. Maybe he's had a few kids, taught his kids. He's taught his grandchildren. Hopefully. But the problem wasn't a Lot. The problem was that Lot wasn't doing that. So, peradventure, there's 10, God, 10. Last time, 10. And God looked down and said, Abraham, if there's 10 people, I'll not destroy. Abraham, that should do it. That should do it. That should do it. Well, we're about to find out if there were 10 righteous people. Let's see. Alright. Anywho, that's all. Brother Josh, back to you.
That's right, Dr. Who. And you're exactly right. Abraham negotiated, so to say, with the Lord, so much to so that he took it all the way down to 10. He said, peradventure there's 10 righteous. Will you save the city? He said, I'll save the city. I'll save all for the 10's sake. But there wasn't even 10 people righteous in the whole city that evening. After negotiating with the Lord, with Abraham. All of a sudden, just outside the gate where Lot was sitting, Lot was like one of the judges of the land there. And he was sitting at the gate. And 2 men came, but they were angels of the Lord. They came up and Lot knew immediately that they were angels, and he bowed himself before them. He said, come dwell in my house for tonight. So they did. They went to his house, and news got around that there were some new men in the city. And they hadn't met them yet. Now this was a very wicked city. They were wanting to do some really bad things to the men. And that's not nice at all. But I do know this, Lot wouldn't have it. These men came and they came to the door, and Lot locked the men on the inside and said, stay inside, I'll handle this. So the men came and pressed the door and they said, let us in to those men. And Lot said, no, I will not let you in. Junior church, we'll learn a little bit more about that in a little bit. Lot said, you can't come in. So they pressed as hard as they could. And immediately, the Bible says they pressed towards the door. And immediately the men on the inside, the angels reached out, grabbed Lot, and pulled him inside, and smote all the men on the outside with blindness. Can you imagine being blind? Just imagine for a moment not being able to see a thing. Well, here they are. They're trying to find their way back to the door and they can't find it. Those 2 angels turned to Lot and his family and say, you got to get out of here. You have got to get out of here. Morning came. And he went rushing. The angels went rushing to Lot and they said, get up your things and get out of here now. He went running to his sons-in-law, his older 2 daughters were married, and he went running to them and said, we need to go now, we gotta escape. And they didn't believe him, so they didn't escape. He went running back to the house, and the Bible says because he was tarrying, finally the angels reached forth and grabbed him by the hand to pull him out of the city. Pulled him out of the city. And grabbed his wife and grabbed his 2 daughters that were with him still, and they pulled him out of the city. The angels said, don't look back. Don't turn around. Don't look back upon the sin of Sodom. They're traveling up the hill, and God sent fire down from heaven and torched the place. Here comes another ball of fire. Burnt Sodom and Gomorrah like a furnace. It was toasted because of their sin. Finally, Lot's wife, curious of what's going on, or however you want to look at it, she turned around. They were told, don't look back. But she did. And when she turned to look back, she never looked forward again. For it was right there she turned into a pillar of salt. Yep. There's an old message called the salt lick of Sodom and Gomorrah. Because horses lick on salt. Anyhow, there she was. She was stuck a pillar of salt. Just like that, because she disobeyed the Lord. Boys and girls, let's not disobey the Lord. Let's obey the Lord right away. Let's obey the Lord so much to so that He is well pleased with our obedience. Let's obey the Lord so much to so that He is pleased with how we obey Him. Boys and girls, I wonder about you. In the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham negotiated with the Lord from 50 to 45 to 40, 30, 20. Lord, even if there's 10 will you not destroy the place? He said, for 10 righteous sake, for them all, I'll keep them all. I'll keep them all safe if there's 10. You know how many people escaped the city? 4. That's it. It was Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. Now, if they had any servants that escaped, praise the Lord. Great. But Lot had been there for years now. He had fought battles with them. He had been captured. Went back home, dwelt with them. Maybe even looked at as a hero, a war hero. But I know this much. He wasn't sharing that he was a follower of God. His own children thought he was mocking when he said that the Lord was going to destroy the city. They didn't believe him. Hopefully, people believe you when they see that you're a Christian. Boys and girls, that's all for today. Thank you for listening in. Thanks for paying attention. I'll see you in junior church. It's going to be a great time. I'll see you there. God bless you, and we'll see you there.